What am I in the eyes of most people? A non-entity, an eccentric, or an unpleasant person. Somebody who has no position in society and will never have any. In short, the lowest of the low. That wasn't a critic speaking. That wasn't an enemy. That was Vincent van Gogh, writing to the only person on earth who believed in him, his brother, Theo. He wrote this not as a teenager full of angst, but as a grown man, deep into his journey. The lowest of the low. Today, his paintings sell for hundreds of millions of dollars. His name is synonymous with genius, with passion, with color itself. We see the sunflowers, the starry nights, and we see success. We see a legend. But Vincent saw a failure. So the question isn't how a troubled man painted beautiful pictures. That's the wrong question. The real question is this: how did the man who saw himself as completely worthless, as the lowest of the low, find a reason to pick up a paintbrush the next morning, and the morning after that, and create a body of work that would change the world forever? The answer has nothing to do with fame, money, or even art. It has everything to do with a quiet, brutal war fought within the confines of his own heart. And that's the story we're diving into today. When you hear the name Van Gogh, you think of a multi-million-dollar industry. You think of museums from Amsterdam to New York, of immersive digital exhibits where people literally walk through his paintings. He is an icon, a brand, a titan of art history. In our modern language, he is the ultimate success story. An artist who, even after death, achieved a level of recognition most can only dream of. His work now represents the pinnacle of artistic and financial value. It's the definition of an abundance mindset realized on a global scale. But this narrative, the one of the tortured genius whose work was finally recognized, is a dangerous simplification. It's a clean, marketable story. The truth is far messier and infinitely more valuable to us. Because Vincent's journey wasn't a straight line towards a posthumous victory. It was a chaotic, desperate search for a single, elusive thing, a sense of purpose in the face of absolute rejection. He wasn't chasing wealth or fame. He was fighting for his own soul. This leads us to our big question. What if Vincent van Gogh's ultimate success wasn't the paintings themselves, but the internal philosophy he forged in the fires of his darkest failures? A philosophy that allowed him to continue working when every external sign told him to stop. What if his real masterpiece wasn't Starry Night, but the profound system of self-development he built just to survive another day? To find that answer, we can't start at his birth, or even with his first painting. We have to go to a place of utter darkness, a cold, miserable mining town in Belgium called the Borinage, a place where his first dream went to die. Before he was a painter, Vincent wanted to be a preacher. He was sent to the Borinage, one of the poorest, most destitute places in Europe, to be a lay minister to the coal miners. He saw their suffering, their poverty, their black-lunged reality, and he threw himself into it. He gave away his food, his warm clothes, the decent lodging the church provided him. He slept on the floor of a tiny shack. He literally descended into the mines with the men, his face covered in soot, to understand their reality. He wasn't just preaching God's word, he was trying to live it in the most extreme way possible. And what was his reward? The church committee, his employers, came to evaluate him. They were appalled. They saw his ragged clothes, his emaciated state, his undignified poverty, and they fired him. They told him he lacked the proper decorum. He had failed by being too committed, too sincere. This was his point of absolute crisis. He was 26 years old, having already failed as an art dealer and a bookseller. Now, he had failed at being a man of God. He was utterly alone, starving, without a profession, and abandoned by the institution he so desperately wanted to serve. In his letters to Theo, the despair is a physical thing. He writes of a molting time, a time when a creature is at its most vulnerable, its most hideous, hiding in the dark. The pain here wasn't just hunger or cold. It was the profound, soul-crushing agony of purposelessness. He had tried to give everything, and the world had told him his everything was worth nothing. And in this moment of crisis, he made a decision that, from the outside, looked like madness. He stopped trying to help. He stopped preaching. He stopped speaking. He withdrew completely and began to draw. He sketched the faces of the miners, their weary wives, their calloused hands. It made no sense. It earned no money. It served no one. And in this isolation, he identified his true enemy. It wasn't the church committee. It wasn't poverty. It wasn't his own social awkwardness. He gave a name to this enemy in his letters. He called it the cage. The cage was this invisible prison of expectations. The expectation to be a respectable preacher. The expectation to earn a living. The expectation to fit in. To be pleasant. To be useful. The cage was society's relentless demand that you justify your existence through a recognizable role. By firing him, the church hadn't just taken his job. They had locked him in the cage and told him he was a worthless animal. He had to get out or die. So what lesson do you learn from a failure this complete? The typical motivational guru would tell you, learn from your mistakes, pivot, find a new strategy. Vincent's lesson was the exact opposite. It was a radical, counterintuitive truth. The lesson was this: your salvation is not in becoming useful, but in embracing your magnificent uselessness. Think about it. The church deemed him useless as a preacher. Society deemed him useless as a provider. He had no skills that could earn him a loaf of bread. In the eyes of the world, he was human driftwood. And in that moment, instead of trying to become useful again, he leaned into the one thing that was utterly impractical: drawing sad miners in the dark. He discovered that when you stop fighting to justify your existence to others, when you stop rattling the bars of the cage, you find a different kind of freedom. The freedom to do the thing that only your soul understands. His art wasn't a career choice. It was an act of rebellion against the cage. It was a desperate personal scream that said, I may be useless to you, but I am not useless to myself. This is the kind of mindset that changes everything. It's not about what you achieve, but about what you choose to do when you have nothing. This brings us to his true beginning. Not his birth, but his rebirth. After the Borinage, he wrote to Theo, essentially announcing his new life. I am taking up my pencil, he said. I am beginning to draw again, and I am not stopping. This wasn't a moment of divine inspiration. It wasn't a sudden realization of talent. His early drawings were clumsy, awkward, technically flawed. He knew it. But his philosophy was different from that of any art student. He didn't believe in talent. He believed in work. Relentless, grinding, obsessive work. His letters from this period are not the ramblings of a madman. They are a masterclass in study motivation. He tells Theo about the books he's reading on perspective, the anatomy charts he's memorizing, the works of other artists he's copying tirelessly. He writes, I am a man of passions, capable of and subject to doing more or less foolish things. But the thing is, to try to turn those very passions to good account. He turned his obsessive, difficult personality, his greatest social weakness, into his greatest artistic strength. He channeled all that fiery intensity into his daily discipline. While others might paint for a few hours, Vincent would go out into the fields and draw the same gnarled tree 12 times, refusing to leave until he felt he had captured its soul. This wasn't just practice. It was a spiritual ritual. It was his way of connecting with the world when he felt so disconnected from its people. And here we must apply the flaw spotlight to see him clearly. Even as he committed to this path, his flaw, his crippling social anxiety and intensity, never left him. He was constantly getting into arguments. He fell in love disastrously and repeatedly. He was often described as difficult, unstable, and unpleasant. He never fixed this part of himself. He never became a smooth, well-adjusted person. And that is the key. His art was not a product of his healing. It was a product of his wound. He wasn't painting despite his pain. He was painting with his pain. He made peace with the fact that he would always be the awkward, intense man who felt too much. He was never going to be normal. And this acceptance is what allowed his unique voice to emerge. He was grateful for the intensity that isolated him, because it was the same intensity that allowed him to see the swirling energy in a starry night. To truly achieve your goals, you must use the entirety of who you are, flaws and all. So, how do we take this profound, messy life and extract something we can use? How do we apply Vincent's philosophy without having to suffer his fate? His letters give us a blueprint. I call it the sower's discipline. Vincent was obsessed with the painter Jean-François Millet, especially his painting of a lone sower, casting seeds in a field. To him, this was the perfect metaphor for life and work. Here is the 3-step formula. Step 1. Choose your seed. This is the obsession, the thing you cannot not do. For Vincent, it was drawing. It wasn't practical. It wasn't profitable, but it was essential. For you, it might be writing, coding, building a garden, mentoring someone. It's the activity that makes you feel most alive, even if it seems useless to the world. It's about finding your authentic, purpose-driven path. Step 2. Work the land. This is the daily discipline. Vincent wrote, "I am getting my hands and feet dirty." You must do the work when you are not inspired. You must do it when you are failing. You must show up and sow the seeds every single day, in the sun and in the storm. This is where you have to stay hard. No excuses. This isn't about motivation. It's about movement. It requires immense discipline and strategic thinking about how you spend your energy. Step 3. Surrender the harvest. This is the hardest part. The sower casts the seed, but he cannot control the weather, the blight, or the birds. He does not know which seeds will grow. Vincent never knew fame or wealth. He sold one painting in his lifetime. He had to learn to find the reward in the act of sowing itself, not in the harvest. You must detach your self-worth from the outcome. Focus on the work, on the personal development, and let the results be what they will be. This is the essence of Stoic motivation. Be grateful for the ability to do the work, and let that be enough. Choose your seed. Work the land. Surrender the harvest. That is the formula. It's a path not to guaranteed success, but to guaranteed meaning. Now, let's go back to where we started, to that devastating sentence Vincent wrote to his brother. What am I in the eyes of most people? A non-entity. In short, the lowest of the low. When we first heard that, it sounded like a cry of defeat, the words of a broken man. But now, after walking through the Borinage, after understanding his battle with the cage, after seeing his sower's discipline, we can hear it differently. It is not a surrender. It is a declaration of independence. He's not asking the question. He's stating a fact and accepting it. He's saying, let me be clear. In the world's eyes, by every metric of societal success, I am a zero. I accept this. I release myself from your judgment. By embracing the label of the lowest of the low, he freed himself from the need to be anything else. He was no longer trying to be a successful preacher or a respectable citizen. He was only trying to be Vincent. The true meaning of his life wasn't about the struggle against madness. It was about the struggle for authenticity. His entire life was a healing journey, but not one that ended in a perfect cure. It was a journey toward accepting his own brilliant, broken self. The abundance mindset he finally found wasn't in a bank account, but in the vibrant yellow of a sunflower, in the loyalty of his brother, in the profound satisfaction of a hard day's work. He found wealth in the act of creation. Your life, right now, might feel like a struggle. You might feel like you're in your own Borinage, trapped in your own cage. You might feel like the lowest of the low. Vincent's message to you is not, it will all be worth it in the end. His message is deeper. It is, make the work worth it now. Find the one thing that is yours alone, the seed that only you can sow. Do it with a furious discipline. Do it with love. Do it when no one is watching, and for no other reason than it is the thing you must do to feel whole. Find peace not in the destination, but in the dignity of the labor. Because a life of meaningful struggle is infinitely better than a life of comfortable emptiness. Thank you for listening to the 500 Millionaire Blueprint. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt trapped in the cage, share your story in the comments below. What is the seed you are choosing to sow? Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about the blueprints that build extraordinary lives. Until next time, stay focused and be grateful for the journey.